So yes, the boxing world is pretty harsh, ain't it? AJ was riding the crest of a wave after a string of 4 wins. Okay, a timid start, but onto an annihilation of Wallin and Ngannou that set him up for big things, and that big thing turned out to be Daniel Dubois. However, after a demolition job from Triple D, the aura is now lost, and he's been the brunt of some very heavy criticism. Fans are calling him overhyped. Yes, okay, some said that before this fight, don't get me wrong, but also they're saying he's always been a fraud. He's fought nobody. So is this justified then? Well, each to their own, of course. Either way, he's now feeling the very same low that he felt after the second Usyk loss. Maybe even lower, to be honest, because he did get smashed in there and he's probably still got a great big fucking headache. But the question is, what now for Anthony Joshua? There's so much to unpack here. What about Ben Davidson? Were we in fact blinded by his last 4 performances against non-elite opponents? And most importantly, can he win the rematch if it were to happen? Fuck knows. But yes, first off, let's talk about the past year and a bit. Out of the 4 opponents, Franklin Helenius, Wallin and Ngannou, it's fair to say that only one of them is borderline top 10 in Otto Wallin. So in preparation for Danny Boy, who prior to this fight was a top 5, top 7 heavyweight, in hindsight, yes, it weren't the best gauge, was it? In fact, it's fairly similar to Fury's recent opponents prior to Usyk. I mean, we had Chisora and then we had Ngannou, and as it showed, you just can't mosey on through that caliber of fighter and expect to do the same to an absolute genius. It's clearly one of the reasons that Fury came unstuck. And so it was the same for Joshua. However, what probably swayed a lot of people towards AJ in this fight, and it definitely did for me by the way, was that regardless of the opponents, he just looked so bloody good in the last 2 fights. The link up with Ben Davidson seemed to be taking shape perfectly, and he showed against Ngannou he's hitting harder than ever. So it was quite feasible that one of these pelters hitting Danny Boy on the chin would not end well for old Dynamite along with his history. It turned out one did hit him on the chin and he took it like a fucking champion, didn't he? He said, "And what, bruv?" But we'll come back to that in a bit. But yeah, looking back, Wallin just didn't pose any sort of threat in comparison to Dubois. He doesn't hit anywhere near as hard, and on the night he was scared to engage. A far cry from Danny Boy, who was all over AJ from the first bell like a fly on shit. And then Ngannou was just pants, weren't he? Not a natural boxer, made obvious mistakes, and he also blinded us by giving Fury a very hard night. So ultimately this was always going to be a massive shock to the system. Now for Ben Davidson. Yes, he used to be boxer-sized Ben, but he's had a blinding run in the sport, taking Leeward to become world champion with other accolades as well, so he's earned the respect. But there has been a lot of criticism about his final words to AJ, which was made a lot worse by Shane McGuigan's thoughts on it.
Warrior spirit, 100%. But we got to be smart.
Yeah, I am.
You rush stepping in with the jab almost every time, unless you're galloping around. Slip and bring it up. Yeah?
If there's a bit of a lull, in behind that double jab, bring it up, roll the dice, he'll double another right hand, lift it, yeah?
Roll the dice.
Roll that dice, innit?
Double in his eyes, bring it
I
up.
think that's dangerous advice there, to be honest. I mean, getting him to bring it up off the double jab. Daniel throws that right hand straight off that double jab. And by bringing it up, he means an uppercut. He's going to walk himself straight onto his short right hand. If you ask me, I'd just say keep your hands up tight, get through these next 2 rounds, and then use your athleticism late down the stretch.
Yes, and he couldn't have predicted it better. But it's not just Shane who's been critical of Ben Davidson in this fight. Old Don Charles, who's on top of the world at the minute, had a little pop as well.
When I'm listening to all the nonsense, all these people, jumped up people, we do film studies. Well, they've got something to go and study now. At least study how to block and defend their jab. That's a starters, yeah?
So yeah, I mean, he is spot on, ain't he? We all knew how good Danny Boy's jab was, and AJ just had no method of defending it, did he? To be honest, he had no way of defending anything because his hands were so low for the majority of the fight, and nobody quite understands the thinking behind that. So as much as he is a brilliant trainer, that is a massive blunder on the part of Benjamin. And of course, in the same way that any major player loses a big fight, people are asking the question, will he stay with Ben after all this? And well, personally, I'd imagine he will. I mean, for one, he's only got a few fights left. He don't want to go trainer hopping like he did after the first Usyk fight, not at this stage in his career. And secondly, he does look pretty comfortable in that setup. He simply may just feel like he made the mistakes himself and didn't stick to Ben's game plan. But who knows? However, just throwing it out there, a few people have mentioned that the best place for AJ to be right now would in fact be in Camp McGuigan. Can you think of anyone better than a man who knows Dubois inside out and has one of the best resumes of world champions in British boxing? Just a thought, unlikely because Shane trains Dubois Dubois' sister, but not out the realms of possibility. But come on, is it fair that he's being called things like overhyped and fraud and that he's fought nobody? Is it right he's being questioned so diligently now about all this after the Dubois loss? Well, it's each to their own, innit? I mean, yes, in a way you could say he has been overhyped, but I suppose that's because his profile became so massive so quickly. He got the Olympics attention, which led to a lot of media attention, then he was world champion, then he got all the brand deals, then he knocked out Klitschko in a barnstormer at Wembley, so he did get put on a high pedestal very early on, and from there every single thing that he did was scrutinised and dissected. But then you got the big one, has he in fact fought absolutely nobody? Well, again, it's all opinions. Throughout his resume, his best wins are probably Klitschko, then Parker, then Ruiz, even though he lost the first one. Along with this, maybe Dillian Whyte, maybe Povetkin. You see, here's why there's so many contrasting opinions on this. We all know now that Usyk, no questions, is the absolute king. But a few years back, around 2021, before Usyk fully arrived on the scene, many would say AJ did actually have the best resume in the heavyweight division, since he'd beaten quite a few top 10s in comparison to the other big time heavyweights. I mean, you had Fury, who'd beaten Wilder and Klitschko in the top 10, but then it got a bit stale on his record after that, with his best win probably being Chisora. And then you had Wilder himself, whose only top 10 win was Ortiz. Then maybe another big player was Joe Joyce, who'd beaten Dubois and Parker. The problem AJ's got now, however, is that since Saudi have come on board, everyone's finally fighting everyone. Meaning Parker's resume looks very good now, Bakole is starting to look good, Daniel Dubois obviously, Zhang, Kabayel, the list goes on. So I suppose in a way AJ's resume doesn't hold as much weight as it did. And then this was his opportunity to beat another solid top 10 contender and show he was still one of the most prominent fixtures, but he fucking lost. So obviously people are going to jump on his record. But anyway, who gives a bollock about all that? The big question is, does he win the rematch if it were to happen? And if not, where should he go next, eh? Well, you know, it was all pretty simple before Dubois won. If Usyk beat Fury again, it was going to be AJ versus Usyk 3. If Fury won, it was going to be AJ versus Fury finally. But with old Danny Boy ripping up the script, nothing is concrete now. I mean, for a start, Frank Warren's dismissed the idea of ever putting Dubois in with Fury, but why? That's a load of fucking bollocks, isn't it? Why should Fury get an easy touch and get to avoid one of the most dangerous heavyweights in the division? And equally, if Fury were to beat Usyk, why should Danny Boy not get a shot at the Undisputed? It don't make sense, does it? Just because they're under the same promotion, why should fans be restricted of that fight? Turkey, sort that out, bruv. Us fans ain't having that, do you know what I mean? But anyway, as for AJ, as far as I can see, his options are rematch Daniel, wait until December, and if Fury loses, fight Fury, that would be ideal, or move on to the likes of Wilder, Bakole, Kabayel, Whyte or Zhang. They're the most likely names in my eyes. So let's dissect them then, shall we? Well, he ain't fighting Zhang, is he? It's just not fucking happening, bruv. It's the most dangerous fight out the lot, and coming off a knockout loss, the last thing we can expect him to do is fight another ferocious knockout artist who's in good form. Then you got Bakole, and yeah, possibly it's a bloody cracking fight, and he's looking very good at the minute. Proper wrecking machine who could cause AJ a lot of problems. But then again, Bakole was dismantled by Hunter, and he ain't been in with a lot of massive punches, so I do see that as a potentially winnable fight for AJ. And then you got Dillian Whyte, also a winnable fight for obvious reasons. Nobody knows how much Dildo's got left these days, and he's already beaten him before. Then Kabayel, yes, it's interesting, again, good fighter in good form, but it ain't got the glamour of the rest of these names because he's still a bit lesser known. It also looks like a potentially winnable fight for AJ because he don't look like the quickest, but then again, we can't say for sure because we ain't got enough receipts on Kabayel yet at the very top level. But you know, personally, I don't really see this one happening because if it were in the UK, it just about sells out the O2. So no disrespect to Kaba, but AJ just ain't got the time to fight the smaller names now. We need the monsters to finish off his career in style, and who better than old Deontay Wilder? This is actually disrespectful to Kabayel because his record is much better than Wilder of late. Sorry, Kaba, bruv, but don't fucking blame me. It's just boxing, innit? Money talks. Wilder's still a massive draw. It's the one we always wanted, and there ain't gonna be a better time than now. Of course, there's still a lot of jeopardy in it. I know on paper AJ's the better fighter, but he's shown more than ever his chin can be a bit shaky. But judging by the Wilder of late, that is definitely a winnable fight for AJ, so why not fucking bring it on? However, let's just finish on the rematch, shall we? And yes, obviously AJ can win it. I'm not saying he does, but he can. He's just got a fucking colossal mountain to climb. He's sure to be thinking he can hurt Danny Boy because he did wobble him a bit in that 5th round, but also he's bound to be thinking had he not taken that huge overhand right in the 1st round, his head wouldn't have been frazzled for the remainder and he could have performed a lot better. Ultimately, this punch changed everything, and I think it's fair to say that AJ did make every single mistake that he could have made. But yes, looking on, it is very difficult to see how he can deal with the pace of Dubois because he's just always pressing the action, Danny Boy. In fact, that's something that AJ has never really had to deal with. Thinking about it, hardly any of his opponents have put it on him from round 1 in that Golovkin come forward style, other than maybe Usyk. But unlike Usyk, when you combine that pressing action with some seriously heavy hands that have already put AJ down 4 or 5 times, you do struggle to see how he can get on top in the rematch, unless he clocks him first. It all comes back to styles make fights, doesn't it? And it just don't look like this is a favourable style for the big man, and that's the back and front of it. Let me know what AJ does next and your thoughts below. Adios for now.